everyone, I'm Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am back to answer more of your questions from Instagram and from the comment section of my previous videos. We are going to talk about episiotomies, which everybody's been asking about recently, and how to talk to your doctor, how to strategize with your doctor, birth plans, mucus plugs, bloody show, all that good stuff. There's a lot of questions that are answered in this one. But before I do that, don't forget to subscribe down below so that you never miss a video and you don't miss a shout out or your question being answered. Let's get started. My mug matches my outfit today. Flex and flow. I made it. I did get so many questions on my Instagram poll that I threw out there. So before I get started, I just want to say that one of the things I noticed, a lot of the questions that came up on Instagram are covered in my childbirth class or my coping with labor class. So I just want to remind you that I do have full classes online. As much as I'm trying to get out these videos as fast as I can, if you want like the whole spiel from me from start to finish, a childbirth class is where to go. Also, if you want any kind of coping help, breathing help, where I talk you through the process of how to cope with labor, I have an entire class on that as well. I also just added scholarships on my website. So if you go online and you're like, there's absolutely no way I can afford this. Now, mind you, from my opinion, those classes are not that expensive. My in-person class costs like at least 5 times that much. So I'm giving you a deal online and they will not be as cheap as they are online forever. But for now, if you're on there and you're like, there's absolutely no way, then please apply for a scholarship. So on my website, and actually it's bundlebirth.com/apply, and you just have to fill out a form and then I will be selecting people monthly to receive free classes. So that's a way that you can still have access to the classes. I want everybody to feel super educated and ready and informed and empowered and all those good things for their labor and birth. And so I wanted to make that more available to you. So now scholarships are available for anyone, anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in the US or not. They're for you. Okay, I did do a little more prep work this time around and did actually like scroll through your comments and look for ones that had kind of a common theme. So let's jump into it. So this comes from the GBS video, all about GBS, which is group beta strep bacteria. If you don't know what that is, please go watch the video. This is from Leslie Roycroft. So if you don't carry the bacteria because you were tested on a previous pregnancy and they find that you don't carry it, would they test you on the next pregnancy? Meaning if you're negative with the first pregnancy, will they test you for a future pregnancy? And I did get this and see this question multiple times and I got it on Instagram. So the thing with GBS is that GBS, member, is a normal bacteria in your vagina, but our bacteria in our vagina changes over time. And so they will test you with every pregnancy. If you're negative one pregnancy, I would say, I don't know the numbers on this, but I would say for historically from my experience that if you're negative on one, it's likely you'll be negative on the next. But if you're positive, no big deal, flex and flow. They'll treat you and then that's literally it. But they will test you for every single pregnancy. I'm just gonna fly through these really quickly because there was a lot of really good ones and hopefully I can like answer a ton of them this time around. Kristen Noggle 1 week ago says, this is on the 5 tips you need to know about labor, birth, and life video. She says, I have a question. I live in Pennsylvania and I'm being told by my provider that I do not have a choice who delivers my baby and that it could be any of the 10 physicians in their practice. I don't really have a choice to switch because I work for healthcare and these doctors are affiliated with. What, if anything, could you suggest to me? So this is super common, particularly I would say like in the Kaiser system in the US. I'm sure that there's other local organizations that are the same way. A lot of doctors function in a group, which I don't blame them because being on call is rough. And so when they're in a group, what happens is you may see the same provider through your pregnancy. You may also see somebody from the group during your pregnancy. And then when the time comes of delivery, there's one doctor that's on call, usually for about a day, and they're just available for all the deliveries of that day. So that is not uncommon. In fact, I would say that's very common. And so when talking about like how to choose a doctor and how to feel comfortable with your provider, some good questions that I have for you / some suggestions that I have related to getting to know your doctor and understanding the practice would be, first of all, how many doctors are in the practice? Because for somebody that has 10 doctors in their practice, the likelihood of you seeing somebody that you've seen in the office is pretty slim, which is fine, but you just need to be prepared with the expectation that you may not know the doctor at delivery. You can also ask to meet the doctors and you can say like, look, can I just be introduced to some of them throughout the course of your pregnancy so that it doesn't feel like such a foreign face? The other thing is also a lot of times with these group doctors, you're also not really seeing the doctor until delivery time. They are in communication with your nurses. Your nurses are there like one-on-one with you the entire time, but the actual doctor is not there until pushing and delivery, and a lot of times the nurse pushes with you until like the head is right there and you can see it almost crowning, and then they'll call in the team. So it may or may not matter quite that much for the delivery purpose, but what really matters is that your preferences are respected and that what you want for your labor and birth, that you can kind of set up some clear expectations about what's allowed or what's not allowed. So when you're asking these questions, or you go to your doctor, and actually I think I have a question about a birth plan coming up, if I remember correctly. So I'll talk about that when I get to the birth plan piece. But when you're talking to your doctor, you would say like, look, this is what I want. How do you feel about this? And what's the general feel in your practice? Because a lot of times doctors that practice the same way, that agree on some of the same things, that like kind of have the same system for functioning, they'll work together. Not always, flex and flow. You kind of want to get a feel for, based on all the providers, what are the chances that I will be able to do fill in the blank, deliver in the tub, get in the shower, move around, deliver on all fours, whatever you want, okay? You can also ask the nurse, how does this doctor deliver? Like, will this be an option, so that you're constantly holding your hands open and being flexible to the situation based on who your provider is. I hope that sort of answers the question. I don't know that it necessarily does, but it at least will give you some tips to working with your care team. This is perfect. So my next question, this comes from Sabrina Kopass. This is all about delayed cord clamping. So she mentioned, thank you for what you do. I have a question though. How would you bring up your birth plan to your provider? In my case, my OBGYN. This is my first pregnancy, so I'm kind of new to all of this. Of course you are. Most of you, you're all new to this. This is why I'm here. Honestly, I would say think about what you want before you go into your provider. Birth plans need to be 1 page or less. If you come in with a 6-page birth plan, the likelihood of you, first of all, getting everything on that birth plan to happen is slim to none, to be honest. Like, that's how life goes, right? Not everything happens the way we want it to. We don't have time. Even as a nurse, like if somebody brought in a 6-page birth plan, I'd be like, okay. But you have so many other things happening. You try your best to look at a 6-page birth plan, but like it's not gonna happen as much as would a 1-page birth plan. So if you bring in 1 page, I can skim that and get a very clear definition of what you're looking for. So this also helps you to prioritize what's important to you on 1 piece of paper, not being able to go on and on and on and on. If you have like 5,000 requests, that's great for your partner or for your doula, but otherwise put it on 1 page. And then I would say somewhere around the 35 to 37 week mark, which is right when you're getting up to term, that you bring it in and say, hey, look, I have my birth preference list. I understand that you can't plan everything with birth, but I do have some preferences or some things that are really important to me that I'd love to chat with you about, so that I can set clear expectations for my delivery day and know what's an option and what's not an option. A lot of times with the plan, providers are like, oh, here we go. Like, she wants all these dramatic things, when really you're like, no, no, no. I want skin to skin, I want breastfeeding, I want to delay my cord from clamping, hence video. These are very simple requests, but it's more just a tool for you to be on the same page with your provider. And so when you go in saying and recognizing already, hey, I know that like I can't plan everything, but I want to talk about what's important to me. When you phrase it that way, you're going to get it across a little bit easier to your care provider, because not every provider is going to be super excited about birth plans. The idea is we want you to be able to voice what's important to you, and you want a care provider who listens. So when you kind of frame it in that reference, you just bring it up, hey, can we talk about what's important to me? Or you could also give them a heads up, hey, so I've been looking at and putting together a birth preference guide. At what point in the pregnancy would you feel like it's important that we go over that? They'll probably tell you at 37 weeks it's appropriate, or we don't need to talk about that till later, or you can bring it in whenever you want. That's how I would go about that one. This is a great one. This comes from the Coffee and Questions bonus, the last Coffee and Questions that I did, where I talked about pushing. So if you want to learn more about pushing, go back to that video and you can learn a little bit more about that. But Kimberly Road says, oh, hey, I was told by a friend during your laboring to push at the end of your contractions to help the baby while you're dilating. Is this actually something that can help move the baby down? Okay, when I saw this question, I was first of all actually kind of excited, because I was like, yes, let's clear this up, because the answer is actually no. You do not want to be pushing until your cervix is completely out of the way, which leads me back to trusting your baby and trusting your body that it can do it. First of all, the contractions have so much power to press on that cervix. You don't need to give them any other power. Plus, don't waste your energy, okay? That is enough to move the cervix out of the way. When you are pushing prematurely, that also goes for mamas that maybe are 8, 9, almost 10 centimeters, and they still have a little bit of cervix blocking the baby's head from coming down. When you're pushing up against it, and if your provider tells you not to push, it is actually really important that you don't push, because that cervix can get swollen. And if it gets swollen, it therefore gets thicker, which is less effaced and makes your labor go a lot slower. Now, can you still deliver vaginally? Yes, I actually had a mama this last week that had a super swollen cervix, and we were really stressed about it. We did a bunch of different things, and then she delivered vaginally, which it just takes time, but it did slow things down. And so you don't want to push too prematurely on the cervix, or it can just swell it up and make your labor last a lot longer. Also, if you're pushing hard enough, you can actually tear the cervix, which we do not want either. So we're trusting our bodies that your cervix knows what to do, and then once you're 10 centimeters / you have the urge to push, that one's a flex and flow based on your provider, and that's particular to if you don't have an epidural. The idea would be that you wait until you're checked with a vaginal exam and you see that you're 10 centimeters, and then there's therefore no more cervix left. This leads to the whole argument of like not going against your instinct or pushing when you feel the urge. Yes, push when you feel the urge. If you're feeling the urge though, particularly when you're in the hospital setting, you want to let somebody know and say, look, I really feel like I have to push, but I can't hardly help myself. And so then they can check you and they can tell you, yes, your cervix is out of the way, let's push, or they can help you with strategies, particularly positioning or like maybe some counter pressure to help you avoid pushing until your cervix is out of the way. Now, if you are sitting there and you are like, oh my God, I can't help it, I'm really trying really hard, then there's nothing that we can do to tell you not to push. Like when that urge comes and it's that overwhelming, like that's another story. But if you can avoid pushing prematurely, yes, you should. You should not be pushing on the cervix, especially when you know that you're not dilated, just for the sake of moving it out of the way. I'm so glad that you asked that so we can clarify that question. This comes also from Coffee and Questions January 2019. It also applies to the whole water breaking video. So if you haven't seen water breaking video, go there so that you can learn about like your water bag breaking. Vernas, listen to me, my Spanish is coming out. Vernas Nail says, okay, so with both of my pregnancies, my water broke and I went to the hospital, got put on Pitocin, and at 7 centimeters, my doctor came in and said I had a second water bag and broke it, and my contractions got 10 times worse. So my question is, why did I have 2 water bags with both my pregnancies? Great question. I love these, guys. You have such good questions. Remember in the water bag breaking video, I talked about that it could be a trickle or it could be a gush. 2 things here. First of all, your water bag does have 2 layers. There's the chorion and the amnion. You can Google that if you want. So that's like just one kind of side note to this situation. What's really happening here likely is that your water broke, but it was actually broken towards the top of the uterus, like the top of the water bag versus down here. And so it's broken, you're leaking, but there's still that barrier between the head and the cervix. And so the water bag still is sitting there blocking the baby from, well, not blocking, but like in the way of the baby really putting pressure on that cervix. And so the water can be broken, but then they come in and they may break the bottom part of the bag so that that head can sit right there. It does then speed up labor. That's also why sometimes if your water breaks and you're like, yeah, but like nothing's happening or nothing's speeding up, it is possible that maybe the water broke up top. And so there still is like an actual barrier between the baby sitting on the cervix, which that is really what's gonna make your labor speed up a lot of times. Not always, but most of the time. This comes from Signs of Labor, when to go to the hospital. Asif C says, wow, thank you, great information. Question, so regular contractions with regular frequency every 2 to 4 minutes for 1 to 2 hours is real labor or is just pre-labor contractions? Also, how long does it take for real labor hospital trip to occur after these pre-labor contractions? Is this a span of days, hours, or weeks? Here we go. Contractions every 2 to 4 minutes for 1 to 2 hours is probably real labor. The key to that whole video is that you are having to breathe, that your contractions are all consuming. I labored with a mama this week. There's always a shift when you hit active labor where it's like, okay, I'm good. Like, oh, okay, I'm like coping. And then it's like, or like there's absolutely no world going on around you. And she said that, she's like, you always said all consuming, and now like I totally get it, that it like all, that's why I keep using that word, because it really is this like your whole world is in front of you and all you do in that moment is cope with the contraction. So that is the most important. We want every contraction every 2 to 4 minutes to be like that for at least an hour, and if you live close, like 2 hours before you go to the hospital. So yes, that would be considered likely labor, flex and flow. You have to be checked to know. Labor takes a long time. So I always tell people early labor, and you would learn this from my class. My class goes into detail about when to go to the hospital, what are the stages of labor, what each looks like, and then kind of like gives you some tools for each stage. 0 to 6 centimeters, on average about 20 hours. 6 to 8 centimeters, about 4 to 8 hours. And then 8 to 10 centimeters, 2 to 4 hours, pushing 30 minutes to 2 hours. That's why I say you will not deliver in the car, unlikely for a first baby. Second, third, fourth babies, like the criteria is the same, but the frequency is about every 5 minutes. Like 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, one more and then I'll go to Instagram. This also comes from Ways to Induce Labor Naturally Part 2. Erica V says, I have a question. If I'm almost 40 weeks pregnant and have 0 dilation and 0 effacement, can I still have a membrane sweep done on me, or do I have to be dilated to at least 1 or 2 centimeters? Quick answer is you actually do have to be dilated at least 1 centimeter. They need to be able to fit 1 finger through the cervix and then sweep their finger along. If you are closed, it's unfortunately not an option for you. So keep walking, keep doing all the things, and then wait for next week, and then maybe they'll be able to do it that week. Let's go to Instagram. I did screenshot all of your questions here, and I'm gonna fly through as many as I can get through. Danielle Waltman on Instagram. She says, do you recommend epidural or no epidural for a VBAC? This goes along with my VBAC videos. I have part 1 and part 2. A couple of thoughts on epidurals and VBAC. So in general, my rule of thumb does not change for a VBAC. If you wanna go without an epidural, then go without an epidural. If you wanna go with one, go with one. Don't suffer. That goes for my pain and suffering video. Your doctor may actually recommend that you at least get an epidural placed. So with the epidural, there's a little tube in your back that stays there until you deliver. And so with that being said, they can place the epidural but not give you the medication through it. So you feel exactly the same, but they have access in the case of an emergency. They would be able to just connect the medication to the tube and give you that medication really quickly. And then hopefully you'd be able to be awake for an emergency C-section if you needed one in the case of, let's say, a uterine rupture. Again, not to be scary talk here, but that is potentially an option. Or if you're just opposed to having any kind of foreign body in your body at all, then that's a great conversation to have with your provider. You would just need to understand that in the case of an emergency C-section, they for sure would have to use general anesthesia and put you to sleep for the surgery. There also is no guarantee that even if you place the epidural, that it will work in time for you to have an emergency C-section. And I would say if it's like a full emergency, they probably still wouldn't need to put you to sleep for it. I believe in telling you the truth and going there, but it's not always fun to think about all the stuff that can go wrong. Again, risk is really low, but if it were to happen, you have the option of potentially being awake versus for sure having to be asleep. The King Brit says, you briefly discussed bloody show when you talked about the mucus plugs. This is my mucus plug video. What is the difference between mucus plug and bloody show? Mucus plug is strictly mucus, so it's just like the yellowy, gooey stuff, whereas bloody show is where there's mucus and then little bits of blood in it. There was another comment that came up on the comment section. This comes from Jacqueline Rose. She says, brown mucus plug is normal. That means it's the bloody show. Bloody show is a sign of labor. Also, losing a mucus plug is not a sign of labor. A mucus plug can regenerate. Just to review, your mucus plug is not a sign of labor. I did say that. And then brown mucus plug, the concern with the color of the mucus plug, if it's a little bit brown tinged, like more of like a yellowy, lighter brown, not a big deal. But if your mucus plug comes out and it is brown, that's weird. That would be abnormal. That could signify infection. And that would be something to call your provider about, only to inquire what they want you to do about it. That is different than bloody show. Now, old blood, like if you've had a vaginal exam and there was a little bit of bleeding that kind of sat up there for a while and then mixed in with the mucus, could be streaky, like dark, rusty colored blood in the mucus. That also is normal, not a big deal. Bloody show is where you have slimy, bloody discharge. It shouldn't be like a period. Like imagine with a period, it's like if you were just like spread your legs and drip, that there would be like blood drops, right? Versus bloody show or mucusy bloody is like gooey, stringy, like blah, with blood in it, and then you wipe it away and it's like gobs of mucusy blood. It's not purely strictly blood. Like if I were to cut off my finger, it's just drip, 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 drip on the floor. Along those lines, Ingrid Wall says, will there be guaranteed be blood when the mucus plug comes out? No, there won't guaranteed be blood, only sometimes. So to differentiate, there's mucus, not a sign to go to the hospital, just cool, yay, woohoo, slimy, gooey stuff. We like it. Bloody show is where there's some fresh blood mixed in, so it actually is red. Mixed in with the mucus It is not always a sign of labor. So if you just have that and you don't have contractions, that is not a reason to go to the hospital, as so long as it's mucusy blood. You can always reach out to your provider to be sure. If there's blood, like cut your hand off, just dripping blood, that's a reason to go to the hospital. That could mean something else is going on, which we don't like. And then brown mucus plug is like dark brown, like a poop brown. That would be a reason to call your provider. I hope that clears up the mucus plug situation. There's a lot of them on coping with labor, guys. So Kimberly S88 says, what's your best advice for a first-time mom wanting a natural birth? Britt B says, how to cope with pain during labor. There were a few comments that I saw on YouTube about coping with labor, particularly you guys wanting breathing practice. I love breathing practice. I could talk breathing for a very long time, and I do in my coping with labor class. So I'm gonna guide you over there only because I've already done all of that content. If you can't afford it, apply for the scholarship. Otherwise, it's worth your money. I promise you that. Christina Mead says, is it weird to bring your own hospital gown to give birth in? Not at all. If you wanna wear what you wanna wear, then bring it. The only consideration is if/when you have an IV, they will have to like weave it kind of awkwardly through your IV. But if you wanna get like a cute little patterned hospital gown to bring along, then go for it. Oh, this is a big one, guys. How did I not bring this up? Okay, and then last but not least, you guys have been asking so much about episiotomy. Related to the vaginal tearing video that I did, Rach says episiotomy versus tearing and what they mean for later birth. An episiotomy is where instead of allowing the tissues to stretch while you're pushing, your provider actually uses a scissors and cuts the space between the bottom of the vagina hole to the butthole, and not all the way down, but they make like a little like snip, or like, and it's usually maybe like this long, let me do it over here, like this long, sometimes a little longer. Episiotomy is no longer the recommendation from ACOG, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. It is not quite as common as it used to be. It's a great question to ask your provider. How often do you perform an episiotomy, and then in what circumstance would you do an episiotomy, meaning make that cut versus let you tear. The recommendation is no longer to have an episiotomy, to use an episiotomy only in the circumstance of an emergency where the head is right there, it's through the pelvic bones, and the only thing holding the head back is your vagina hole tissues, and they're looking at the heart rate of the baby and they're saying, we gotta have this baby now, like let's deliver. And so in that case of an emergency, your doctor would make that judgment call and they may perform an episiotomy. Outside of that, it is no longer the recommendation to make the cut, because first of all, if you make the cut, you for sure have a tear to fix. There still has to be a repair, meaning they have to stitch you up. Second of all, they find that like the vagina tissues are like my finger. When they tear apart, and then they actually heal back together stronger when you allow them to just tear and kind of come back together, versus you make a cut right in between that. They don't heal quite as well or quite as strong as they would when you allow them to tear and then heal back together. This is somewhat of a recent thing. I think like when I first started practicing 8 years ago, almost everybody had gotten episiotomy because it was the common thought that like it's the best thing for you. But now the standards have changed, and in general, episiotomies should be used for an emergency situation and not just routinely from your doctor. Great question for your doctor. Depending on what country you're in, depending on who your provider is, there may be some variation in that, but in general, the best case scenario is we let your body stretch. You may just stretch enough and not tear. Whereas if they cut you, like you gotta be sewed up. That is all that I have time for today, guys. Thank you so much for sending in your questions on Instagram, for being so active with me on there. I am loving your comments. Continue commenting down below, because there's no limit as far as how far back I can go to answer some of your questions. If they weren't answered in this video, they may get answered in the next video. So keep shouting out, keep communicating with me. I love hearing from you, and I'm so grateful for all of you guys and your loyalty and your comments and your stories. Don't forget to use #BundleBirth or BundleBirthBaby. And then I get to see all the little bundle birth babies out there. If you're looking for birth coaching, you can look at my birth coaching video where I explain like what the process is, but I get to help you one-on-one get ready for your labor and birth from anywhere in the world. You can go to my website for that. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. I am updating when I'm posting videos. I'm asking for polls. I believe I may actually start doing Instagram Live, which now that I've recorded that, I have to. So you can stay tuned there as far as when I may be answering your questions live. I think that's all. So until next time, don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you very soon. Bye. Welcome back. Garbage trucks. Ooh. Oh, my makeup looks on point today. Who uses a post-it anymore? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. The idea, which, thanks. Whoa, it's gonna be fun. Let's do it. Ooh, evil. What else? Comments in the YouTube channel. Valentine's Day has come and gone. Do you want a flex and flow mug? Because I think I'm gonna turn this into a giveaway. I really like it, but I feel like one of you should have it. And or a video that I shoot out there. What's that? Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.